Good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
Welcome to the September 11th, 2018 Board of Education for Evanston Township High School Board. Could we have a roll call, please?
Here.
Here. Here.
Here.
Here.
Here. Thank you. All right, the first item on our agenda is written communication. Dr. Davis?
We have no written communication this evening.
All right, thank you. All right, next, we're at information items. So the first item is recognition of those who excel. School Board Member, Mr. Mark Metz.
Well, good evening, Board. I do have two honors to award this evening. And the first one is indeed Those Who Excel Award for School Board Member Mark Metz. Let me explain a little bit about this award and why Mark was nominated and how it turned out. Obviously, all of you know that Mark serves on the school board, but what you might not know is the state of Illinois, the State School Board Association, has a annual awards program called Those Who Excel. And they have several categories in which people can be nominated, and we nominate people regularly in categories for Those Who Excel. One of the categories, and we nominate most years, but no category except maybe Teacher of the Year do we nominate all categories every year, is one called Board Member / Community Volunteer. And this year, in reading that criteria, it was just so clear that Mark really qualifies in both categories as a board member and as a community volunteer. He has served on the board since 2009, and he actually was appointed back then to fill a vacancy and subsequently was elected to 2 full terms on the board as well. He's also served twice as school board president and has been very involved, as you know, in our equity work. He has participated in Beyond Diversity training. He has worked with all of you and with earlier boards in creating our equity statement. He has worked with all of you and earlier boards in examining our policies, our practices, our procedures. And he was one of the board members. In fact, we only have 2 currently on the board, Mark and Ms. Livingston, who were on the board when the first vote was taken many, many years ago to begin the restructuring of the freshman year, which was such a leading edge decision and vote that has obviously been a foundation to all the work that we're currently doing here at ETHS. What you may or may not also know is Mark has served on the Evanston Parks and Recreation Board. He has been on the Evanston Citizens Committee Against Handgun Violence. He led the Police and Firefighters Pension Plan Task Force for the city of Evanston. And he has been active in youth sports organizations in this community for decades, and most notably in the area of youth baseball, where he served for many years as one of the leaders of our youth baseball programs in the city, and now continues to serve in a capacity as a baseball coach here at ETHS for our students as well. He's been very active in the community, very active in the school district. He is our nominee, but I also want to point out one other thing. The state board reviewed his nomination, and they have categories of awards that they present, and Mark has been awarded by the Illinois State Board of Education with an award of excellence for his work at ETHS and in the Evanston community. Mark, if you'd come forward, we have a little certificate for you. behalf of ETHS and, I think I can say it, the Illinois Board of Education, congratulations to our Award of Excellence winner, Mark Metz. Okay. Great. Thank you. Congratulations, Mark. Thank you. And the other award is getting to be a little bit routine, but it's not at all routine. ETHS has once again been honored with the Certificate of Excellence in Financial Reporting by the Association of School Business Officials International. This is a really important award. This Certificate of Excellence is for having met or exceeded their programs, and again, this is an International Association of School Business Officials, high standards for financial reporting and accountability. I think what's really fun to know is that this award has been given for 40 years. But ETHS had never won this award until 10 years ago. And this is now the 10th consecutive year that ETHS has been awarded the ASBO International Certificate of Excellence in Financial Reporting. And I'm going to ask Mary Rodino to come forward and to receive this 10th consecutive award. Oh, yeah, why don't you? That would be great.
So-
And a chance to introduce somebody that you
Yes.
need to know.
So while we're receiving this award, I'd like to invite Kendra Williams up. And I was going to introduce her at our budget presentation, but Kendra's our new Assistant CFO. So she replaced Connie Pagao, who retired July 31st. She's had a busy summer. She also had a baby, and she got a new promotion. And so Kendra just finished our 2018 audit. So while she wasn't in charge of the audit that we just won this award for, I don't want to put any pressure on her, but we'll be expecting this award for the 2018 financials as well. So I wanted to introduce her and thank her for all of her help and her multitasking right now and everything else. So
That's great, and she's doing a great job.
phenomenal. So
Thank you, Mary. Thank you,
Thank
Kendra.
you. Oh,
Did you-
picture?
Okay. Yeah, let's get all
Sure.
three. You want to step over to the side, maybe?
Sure.
There you go. Okay, got it.
Nice.
Okay, thank you.
We also coordinated our clothing too.
And that concludes the awards.
Wow. Well, that is just such a great way to start our meeting. Thank you. I'd like to start our meeting every month that way, can we? Congratulations, Mary and Mark.
Thank you.
I love how you sit there looking and very uncomfortable. So,
Yeah,
Congratulations.
yes,
Thank you.
congratulations.
thank you.
I don't know if others have anything you'd like to offer? Members? I guess I would like to say, particularly to Mark. Mark, I've worked with you for so many years, and since I've been on the board, you've been on the board, and I've just have to say that I've been hugely impressed by your integrity, your wisdom, your commitment to our students, all of our students here, and the work you have put in to understand the equity needs and issues of this district and this community, and just how well you speak to it and courageously you speak to it. So I am deeply impressed and appreciative. I consider this award very well deserved, very well deserved.
Thank you, Pat. That means a lot coming from you. And Eric, thank you, and thanks to the committee. This whole thing, I am uncomfortable.
I know.
It's like being in the spotlight part just isn't comfortable, but it's humbling. It's humbling to be singled out by the committee here at ETHS that chose nominees and the people who wrote to support the nomination, and then to the state of Illinois. And frankly, didn't understand it at first. You know, I just thought, you know, I'm doing my job like everybody else in this room is doing their job. But nevertheless, I'm deeply grateful for your confidence in me. Thank you.
Yes, go right ahead.
Well, Mark, I'm extremely proud of you. I want to thank you for being a mentor to me as I've transitioned on this board. I truly appreciate our conversations about how we can try to do our part to make this world better. I highly respect your character and your integrity in this equity work that we do. I highly respect your courage to speak the truth and stand up for what's right, even when you know it's unpopular. And I thank you, and it's so well deserved. And I'm proud to call you my fellow board member and a friend.
Thank you.
Okay, so Mark has just told me to move on. Sorry, call you out. All right, so I will move on. So we are at item number 7, report on summer curriculum projects. I believe that's Dr. Davis.
All right, I will, this is a brief update on our summer projects from summer 2018. A little bit of background, all summer projects are aligned to district goals. Those are in the report. We were primarily aligned to goals 1 and 2. We had 100 teachers participate in summer projects this summer. They completed 30 projects, and we remained within budget. I know.
It's always good.
Summer curriculum projects are important for a variety of reasons, particularly curriculum development, assessments writing, standards alignment, and professional development. Just some highlights from the report. In terms of new and revised courses, we were able to work on 3 English. We were able to work in our geometry course to revise that. And our health science and careers course, as you know, shifted from our CTE department to our science department. So there was a curriculum revision involved there as well. In terms of assessment writing, AP Gov, government, or as students call it, AP Gov. The College Board has revised that exam and that course, and our team followed suit and revised the assessments for that course. We reviewed and updated our civics assessments, and we completed our rigorous geometry assessment profile, which means we now have learning target assessments and what are called FRQs, which are more comprehensive assessment questions, and those are being rolled out in real time. That was a substantial curriculum assessment writing process that our teachers went through. In terms of standards alignment, we really embraced the next generation science standards in our chemistry department this summer. They worked on integrating a series of labs and developing labs that really focus on the next generation science standards. So what that means is the days of the cookie cutter lab, which we're all familiar with as students, has now shifted to more inquiry-based labs. So what we've done is we've created a menu of opportunities for our teachers to go in and look at various inquiry-based labs where the results aren't always as clear, but it's engaging in the scientific process. That's the best way I'll describe it at this point. We also did significant standards alignment in geometry, particularly around the assessments. Each assessment we give, whether it's a learning target assessment or a broader-based assessment, is now specifically aligned to very discrete mathematical standards. Moving forward, we'll continue to have curriculum reviews drive the process. That's what occurred in the chemistry piece, the next generation science standards, the need for hands-on labs. That came out of that process. Students spoke about it, teachers spoke about it, and our data indicated that we really needed to work on that. We'll continue to use our summer work to create and develop new courses and to revise existing courses, really putting a premium on assessment writing in the years coming up. Standards alignment is always, it's here to stay. I think I've said that for the last 8 to 10 years. It's not going anywhere. Professional development, we didn't fund our Chrome camps this summer out of summer curriculum funds, but we will be looking to, since we've been able to save money to fund professional development this year with some of those funds. And again, we remained in budget. Here's just a quick budget snapshot. If you see from 2013, we did 27 projects at $125,000, approximately $4,600 per project. And today we did 30 projects for $65,000, and the per project expenditure was $2,100 thereabouts. We did that because we've capped our expenditures in terms of what we spend per revision or per new course development or per assessment writing. So we've capped that, and we've been able to really do a nice job with our fiscal responsibilities. And there's the capping revisions, 3,200 and 2,400 per revision. Yeah. That's the brief outlook and report. Are there questions about what we did?
Excellent.
Open.
Go ahead, Gretchen.
So Pete may guess where I'm going on this, but I was reminded of one of our courses when I was reading the ETHS parent listserv recently, and there was a reference to the, I think, really unfortunately named course, Contemporary Adult Life. And this course, as any ETHS student knows, is something that fits that consumer ed requirement. My recollection, very fuzzy, is that at least 3 student school board rep members ago, this board and that rep in particular raised the prospect of revising this requirement and this course in particular to turn it into something that looked more like a financial literacy course, which would be, I think, even if you just called it financial literacy, a better name than contemporary adult life. Because what is that really?
What is
So and maybe my memory's a little fuzzy on this. I'm not trying to, maybe I was completely wrong, but I thought we had a little traction around the idea of getting a jump on this issue of financial literacy. And it seems to me this might be, it occurs to me, since we're having this report tonight, that our summer curriculum project might be to look at that course. And, probably for about 10 cents, you could come up with a better name. And then perhaps more importantly, though, you could come up with some substance that would be more relevant to our students. And I confess, I don't know what the current state of affairs is in contemporary adult life, but at least one of my ETHS students took it, and it was not particularly contemporary and not particularly relevant. So I'm going to toss that out there, and maybe you have a reaction.
So my reaction is, absolutely, we can certainly revise a course. We can certainly look at that. I'll work with the department chair to really see I know that the content has been revised over the years, and that there are financial literacy aspects. The syllabus is, take a look at that, work in progress. But we'll certainly look at that, and next summer, hopefully I can report back on the progress we've made on that revision, or on at least updating maybe the course title. Of course,
I think it's a great, and I understand that you really have to grapple with this issue of standards alignment and sort of the shifting landscape there, and our core courses and all that kind of stuff. So I'm not suggesting that this is something that needs to leapfrog ahead of that, but it seems to me it might be something we could do alongside.
We'll take a look.
Thanks.
Other questions, Mark?
My question is about this slide. I was looking at those costs, and of course, if you look in our report, it just shows those totals. And you see an almost steady march down to spending in 2018, just a little bit more than half of what we spent in 2013 for a few more projects. so call it half.
Yeah.
Right, so, I don't want to believe that we were so inefficient in 2013 that we were just throwing money around, right? And so, if that's true, then my question is, are we too skinny in 2018? Is this a natural tightening process and we're able to do this because of efficiencies, or is this a necessity because we're cutting this so we don't have to cut other things to make our budget?
I would say that we've been funded to the level of the request. So if I've requested funds, I've always received them. Some
Okay.
years, we've had bigger projects in scope, for example. But really, the clarion call was 2014 when I looked at that number and I said, you know what, we can do better, we can be more efficient. So I convened a group of department chairs. We really looked at it, we looked at where we could pick up some efficiencies, some accountability, and we came up with this 3,200, 2,400 marker. It used to be a per participant cap and not a per project cap. So that was the fundamental shift. We took the lay of the land, we looked at what other districts were doing, and we said, well, if a general course revision, we should be able to do that for $2,400, whether there's 2 people working on that or 10. Same thing goes for a new course and a substantial revision. So by doing that, we really were able to really set parameters around those projects that way. And it also, it came from the chairs in working with them. They really took ownership over that, and I wanted to be fair and wanted to hand them the accountability. They actually have oversight over individual projects within their department. So we added that layer as well.
Well,
But,
I'm
that said, I could always use more money.
Well, again, it's not,
I know what it
this is really
is,
important
yeah.
work. I mean, I know doing this kind of thing on the fly during the school year is impossible, right? So this work in the summer to get things right, curriculum, coursework, all that, and revisions is really, really important. And I just want to make sure that we're not getting too skinny there. But I think you answered, you said you've always been funded.
Yeah, that's the key
And
part.
so, you've gotten what you've asked for and what's needed, and you found some efficiencies, and of course, we're all very grateful for that.
The other thing is, you'll notice that the costs are split across fiscal years, so the money I save this in August, I can utilize for June projects where there's a tighter timeline.
Yeah.
They get the month of June. So, those things are also important to keep in mind. So we're doing okay, but again, every time I've asked, I've been funded, thanks to Bill and now Mary. They've been very, very supportive of the work. But any efficiencies I can get out of the process are also really important as well.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. That's a good question. Other questions, comments? All right, well, thank you very much for that report and those explanations. Great. All right, next item on our agenda is the report on the Year of the Black Male. And Dr. Campbell and Dr. Davis are reporting, and got some information in the packet.
You want to drive?
Okay.
All right.
Good evening. Dr. Davis and I are pleased to report on something that we've been working on here as a staff for very targeted for the past year, and we would like to share a little bit of the ins and outs of how we've come to some of this work, and talk a little bit about some data and to share where do we go from here. So the mission, and this was outlined in the packet, but it was important for Dr. Davis and I to really speak to you about it, because as we have begun and engaged in the work, it has been very important for us to continue to tease out our mission, to talk about our mission, and to remind ourselves of what we're actually doing when we talk about or when we say what the Year of the Black Male is. So I'm going to read it. I know we don't typically read what's on the PowerPoint, but I'm going to read it just for the sake of, for our hearing and for our understanding. And that is, our mission is to dig deeper into the experience of black male students by holding candid conversations amongst faculty, staff, students, parents, and the community about organizational obstacles, institutional systems, and beliefs to find positive ways to work together to solve those challenges and achieve racial equity. So what we do understand is that this is a coming together of all of our constituencies here at ETHS to address an issue that is not specific to ETHS. It is a national crisis, and this is our way of coming together and figuring out what it is that we can do here in Evanston to change some of the life trajectories and outcomes of some Black male students. So this is our foundation. And we will say this early on, and that is that this is not a program, right? We don't want to call this an initiative. We don't want to add any of our educational jargon to how we talk about implementation for some of this. What we're really trying to engage here is a new way to do school, right? What we're really trying to engage is a way for us to think about how do we run our school, how do we engage in the day-to-day processes of teaching and learning and support in all domains for Black males as we continue to begin to do this work. So as I said, this is not a program. If it were a program, we would have programmed our way out of this a long time ago, but it's about reframing what it is that we're doing and trying to figure out, moving forward with such a complex challenge. According to Sean Harper, he writes, and he's done some study on this work, he's in higher ed, does a lot of studies with tracking Black male student achievement from kindergarten through high school, and what he says is also important for us to renounce a single narrative of Black males in public schools, and that's something for us interesting and very helpful for us to lift up, that we would also want to share with you that there isn't a single narrative about the Black male experience here at ETHS. We cannot confine a single story for what it's like to walk through the halls as a Black male here at ETHS. But we can find that there are some similar patterns and some very consistent experiences that are happening with Black males that we would like to address. And something that Dr. Witherspoon wrote in his back to school letter, and that is that we're choosing to have an asset frame to this, and that is to say that our Black males have high aspirations. They care about school, they care about ETHS, and they are putting forth a highly effective effort to succeed, and that's really important for us to sort through. Okay, so this is a slide that I shared with our faculty and staff on the first day of Institute Days, where Dr. Bavis and I gave an address for a lot of the things that we're doing around here. And our work with Black males can be really pretty much described in this slide here when we talk about equity versus equality. A lot of folks, this is important for us to continue to define what do we mean by equity, and that is essentially doing what it takes to get whatever student that we have in front of us, whatever students that we are working with, the opportunity to achieve. And so I did thank the staff because we've seen some promising signs in the data that we will share with you in a moment that was in your packet, because a lot of teachers did take the extra time to call, to call home, to call each other, to reach out to me, and whatever resources that we had here at ETHS that was available to support Black male students, because we specifically named this as an effort of something that we wanted to address. So once again, I think it's important to define what we mean by equity. And so when we talk about educating, supporting, and affirming Black male identities and lifting them up in the school, it's important to define equity, because that's what we're talking about. So where did this work come from? Well, about 18 months ago, our building leadership team went through Beyond Diversity 2. We're all familiar with, most of us are familiar with Beyond Diversity 1, but we went through Beyond Diversity 2, and then out of that experience, And we have always been isolating race and talking about a lot of social constructions in school, race, gender, class, all of the things. And so out of that experience in Beyond Diversity 2, where our administrators, our superintendent, the teacher leaders, deans, we were all sort of challenged with to reflect on how we were working to support black male students in school. We understand what the national context is, and we also understand what our local context is. And we were all challenged, and Dr. Witherspoon, after that meeting, began to have very candid and open conversations with us and his cabinet about what we were going to do to address the issue outside of Beyond Diversity. We can get up and profess. We said a lot in that experience, but how are we going to move that forward? And so last June, we had a leadership team retreat where we talked a little bit about some data and what we could all do to sort of move the needle and actually started to hold ourselves accountable for better outcomes for black males.
All right, so we have some early indicators to share. They're in the packet. I just wanted to take a moment to walk through those indicators with everybody. These early indicators on this page are pretty much contextual to ninth grade. Our focus was ninth grade black male students. We saw a higher percentage of students earning more A's and B's, a lower percentage of D's and F's, more GPAs above 2.5 in grade 9, and also overall when we pulled back and looked at black males across the school. We saw an increase in credits earned in ninth grade, and what that means is we saw more students making progress and being on track to graduate coming out of ninth grade. We saw fewer tardies, fewer behavior incidents in ninth grade and overall, a higher rate of attendance at Wild Kid Academy for ninth grade black male students, higher participation in extracurricular activities, and significantly an increase. We nearly doubled our individual career and academic plan completion for ninth graders for black males. So so now I'm going to just dig into the actual, I'm going to share a table. Yeah, I'll drive. Okay. For improvements in ninth grade. This is a lot to digest. I'm just going to pick out a few data points that I think are indicative of the work we're doing and the work we need to continue to push forward. If we look at one that jumps out to me is students with a GPA of 2.5 or higher. You'll see we had, and the ends are up there, in 16-17 we had 110 black male freshmen, and in 17-18 we had 136 black male freshmen. We go from 45% of those students with a GPA of 2.5 to 54% with a GPA of 2.5. Earning 12 credits or more is also important. That's the on track to graduate. We went from 81 to 88%. Absences, students with less than 9 days absence, which would be considered chronic absences, we went from 69% to 83%. Zero behavior incidences from 51 to 63%. Students attending Wild Kid Academy, I really need to highlight that, from 49 to 63%. We'll talk a little bit about that later as a specific strategy that really touched on different levels of the organization. And look at that ICAP completion from 41 to 88. I misspoke a minute ago. We more than doubled our ICAP completion for black male students in ninth grade. And again, that was a focused effort. Extracurricular participation was up. So there's a lot to look at. There's a lot to be able to say. These are early indicators of promise, and we are moving in the right direction. Let me look at if I pull back. Now, our focus was ninth grade, but there was a residual effect on students in 10th, 11th, and 12th grade. And the ends are there, 455 in 16 and 17, and 439 students, black male students in 17, 18. This is our school. If our school were black male students, that's what the population is. And you'll see that's a very large number to move. Significantly, GPAs of 2.5 and above went from 46% to 49%. Don't underestimate what goes into that. That's a lot of work to make that progress. You see GPAs of 2.0 and above also increasing. Students with less than 9 days absent went from 65 to 71% in 1 year. and students with behavior instances, with 0 behavior instances, that also increased from 52 to 59. So what we saw here, really, what we're looking at is we focused our work on 9th grade and on black males and working to change and to think about. We did both adaptive work and we did technical work, and we'll talk about that a little bit later as a preview to that. But what we saw was that by focusing on 9th grade the way we did, we actually saw effect throughout the school. And that's a very powerful takeaway. Again, there's a lot of work to be done here. I think if we just isolate those numbers, we say, you know, those are great, those are showing improvement, but they are nowhere near where we want them to be. They are nowhere near what we would be satisfied with. And that brings us to the adaptive work that we did. And I'll let you drive, Dr. Campbell.
Sure, thanks. So on the photo here is Dr. Denise Amante, and she is the executive director of the Disrupting Educational Equity Project. And after our data conversation around black males in June of 2017, we had Dr. Amante to come in and work with that same group who went through Beyond Diversity 2, who sat down and talked about data. We had Dr. Amante to come and work with us on how do we do this, right? This is such a layered, complex issue. How do we as leaders and as an organization begin to tackle some of the things, beliefs, attitudes that go into some of the challenges that we've been facing? And Dr. Amante, interestingly enough, she just gave the keynote address at District 65 for their opening Institute Day at the beginning of the school year, and I happened to be in there, and it was a remarkable keynote she gave. They gave her a standing ovation at the end of her address, and she has just been so wonderful to us that we're going to have her back to keynote our Connections Conference with our staff next month, and I'm really excited about that. And one of the things that Dr. Amante began to take us through, and this is the work that, you know, educational leaders we've discussed at length in a number of other contexts, but for this specific issue, we've talked about it and framed it as an adaptive challenge. And that is, an adaptive challenge is a challenge that involves, you know, problems that are complex, have solutions that aren't clearly arrived at. They trigger loss because they will initiate change, and they require leaders to engage people in order to solve problems. And that's key, because one of the things that we've been doing to really unpack and really understand this adaptive challenge is to rely on one another and engage our stakeholders. This is not what is referred to as a technical challenge, right? So technical challenges require information. Adaptive challenges require transformation, because what we're understanding here is this is going to require a shift in our mindset. Right? This is going to require a shift in our beliefs and attitudes around how we engage school, around policies, procedures, all the things that go into what school is. It's going to require us to think about instruction. It's going to require us to think about support. It's going to require us to think about so many things, because if it's not working for black males, you know, we want to look in and examine that. And without framing this from a deficit model, right, talking about all of the issues and the challenges and so forth, we know what the national backdrop is, right? We know about disproportionality in special education. We know about dropout rates. We know about these things. But what we're trying to do is, as we understand that as a backdrop, we know that if we can tackle and begin to address the issue that we have here, then it will thereby have an effect where we're helping all kids. So by focusing on black males, this is not simply a zero-sum approach where if we're focused on black males, they are our only priority. This priority stands out for us in the way that we can engage all kids. So, but this is going to require some thinking and some a lot of reflecting, which is what we have been doing and engaging as a staff. So we've been talking about this particular slide here as a community for about 18 months, and that is, whose responsibility is it, right? And we have framed this responsibility as the leadership and as teachers to really to look within ourselves to see what can we do, right? What change can we engage? We're not necessarily going to wait on the superintendent. We're not going to wait on the board. We're not going to wait on the administration. And I told the staff, I said, if you're looking for us to have the solutions, we don't have them. We're willing to work with you as a community to try to figure this out. And so we're asking folks to really, and ourselves included, to look in the mirror, to think about how can we disrupt our own thinking and disrupt our own perceived narratives around black male students and how we engage and how we do school so that we can reduce the marginalization that occurs and really propel our students to success.
All right, so there are 5 principles that guide research and practice for young black men, and this is from the work of Howard, Flenna, and Terry. And this work really helps frame the next couple slides you'll see. First of all, you know, as Dr. Campbell referenced earlier, and as Dr. Witherspoon has pointed out, we've abandoned approaches that are deficit-oriented. We've also, in this work, avoided the false dichotomy focused on either the institution or the individual. We know it's both individuals and institutions. We know it's both. It's not one or the other, and that's traditionally been a place where institutions have fallen down. We acknowledge the complex identities and notions of self that young men have, especially in educational settings. This is complex work, there are complex identities, and again, this all speaks to the need for adaptive change. We also call for the voices of black male students to be central in research and in practice. And what you'll see in the subsequent slide is how we've really utilized that approach to guide our curriculum reviews and also to work on our Black Summits, our program planning. And we also need to pay attention to the intersectionality of factors such as race, class, gender, and more, you know, when making identity construction and sense-making with black males. There's no one narrative here, right? There's a multiplicity of narratives, and we need to get away from the single dominant black male narrative that's out there. So here are some examples, right? First of all, teachers, department chairs, administrator leadership really combined to work on this. Very, very focused, whether it was leadership team meetings, whether it was teachers in their classrooms, department chairs reviewing grade distributions with teachers and with their departments, and also with their supervisors going over this, right? You know, what can we do? What's our approach? But also in each of those pockets, working on adaptive processes, like what is your why? Why are you engaged in this work? Sharing that. Special education department dedicated several of their department meetings to sharing their why. All of our departments worked on their why individually and collectively at the start of last school year. So that's a great example of this kind of adaptive change. Our Wildcat Academy example is really about an associate principal who was responsible for Wildcat Academy, looked at the data, connected what he was seeing in the data to the teacher leader who was working out with Wildcat Academy, to teachers, to department chairs, to reach out to students to ensure that the black male students, that we could reach more students and get more students to Wildcat Academy. And we saw those results as a part of that effort. We saw, if you want to talk about the Black Summit programming, Dr. Campbell?
Sure. So one of the things that we did, it seemed like a contradiction, but it wasn't. We went from having Black Male Summit and Black Female Summits to just the Black Summits because that's what students wanted, right? They wanted to be together and they wanted to talk through the intersecting identities of what it means to be who they are in this building, even if they don't identify within the gender binary. But even within the summit planning, there were a lot of conversations around toxic masculinity and a number of discussions that were centered around the engagement of black students with each other, as far as, you know, being from the diaspora and a number of other things that we attempted to do. So it was really important to highlight that with the summit planning, every black male student who attended the summit had a conversation about what toxic masculinity looks like, right? And what the narratives that go into the media and how those narratives get played out here in the school. So that was huge, and we plan to continue a lot of that work moving forward.
And that brings me to curriculum reviews. You know, the central question when we do curriculum reviews is, you know, to what extent do current curricular and instructional design support the success of all students, particularly black male students? We then engage our teachers in looking at and asking for both hard data numbers, but also in what kinds of questions would you like to ask students in terms of the experience they're getting in your class. And then our research department sets out and conducts a series of focus groups, affinity focus groups, by subgroup within the district, within the course, and really gets at questions of identity, questions of not just academic rigor, but is your identity being affirmed in class, and really analyzing that kind of information. Those reports are written up, and these aren't just focus groups of like 5 students. These are focus groups of 75 to 100 students broken out over several weeks as part of that report. It's the first time we've privileged student voice, and particularly the voice of black males in the curriculum. So it's a very important way to look at that. We also have students who are now going to engage in analyzing those transcripts to make sure that we're getting it right. Again, not putting the adult filter on the experience, but asking students, hey, when we make this inference, are we correct? In research, that's called a member check, but that's also really, really good practice. That brings me to Discovering Success Through Music. This was a pilot program we ran last year with Carla Clark and Nick Gale and Allie Hart through our Freshman Advisory Study Hall program. This focused on brain development related to music and reading and social emotional learning and support. There were 33 students enrolled in the program, 12 black males. They did a variety of things. There was a lot of experiential learning, hands-on, going to places like the Goodman and Northlight Theaters. They saw some really, if you're looking at statistics, numbers-wise, 73% of the students earned honor roll or high honor roll who were enrolled in that program. But more significantly, and this is the adaptive change, students described the classroom environment as family. That's the level of trust and the level of community that was built within the context of that classroom. So that's really significant and important. Sophomore English last year was a Pathway to Honors course. We set high expectations. We had teacher buy-in and autonomy within the structure, academic supports that were revisioned for the course, process-driven assessments, portfolios. And really what ended up happening was that we saw the best grade distribution for our black male students in sophomore English classes. What we did was we looked at the tracked versions, took all those students, looked at isolated black males, looked at how they were doing previously, and we compared that to last year where we put every student together in the sophomore writing workshop Pathway to Honors course. And we saw more black male students earning A, Bs, and Cs than ever before, whether tracked or untracked. So that was really, really significant. And again, there was a lot of conversations about, as we built the class, how we were going to, what we were going to do in terms of process and how process is beneficial, process writing, and creating a climate and culture within the course that privileges all student voice within the context of the classroom. And finally, biology with support. We created a structurally flexible support for our biology with support class, which is a class taken by sophomores. That would, instead of taking 2 periods, it actually allowed, it was a flexible support program, and it actually allowed our students to take extra electives. All too often we find that the decisions we make structurally impede students, particularly black male students, from taking a variety of electives. And wherever we can see an opportunity to increase elective participation for our students, we do so. I do this one. All right. So looking forward, there's a lot to look forward to. This work is really in its infancy, right? I really want to point that out. We're really at the beginning and we're in the opening act. Right? We might even be before the opening act. So with that in mind, we really need to continue to examine our structures, practices, and policies and procedures to make systemic improvements, right? I mean, we need to be very conscious of this. Reflect on what needs to change, focus on students' differing needs, and have high expectations for everyone. We also need to examine our restorative practices, alternative to suspension programs and structures to include student voice as part of this work. And we're learning every day about how to do that and how not to do that. There are pitfalls in that work. There have been books written about it, actually, that articulate what those pitfalls are, and that good intentions only get you so far. So we're being very thoughtful about that work. And we continue to examine the social construct of race and gender and how the narratives of such constructions impact the lives of ETHS students, particularly black males. And you're on. Want me to change that? There you go.
Because ultimately, this is what we really want. We want to get rid of the fence, right, and the need for the boxes, right? And which brings us to a point where every student can see the game regardless of who they are, where they come from, and that's what we're working towards. We'll take your questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation and the slides. I will open it up for questions. Monique? Yes.
This is really challenging work. And it seems to me that there's a tension, and I don't know how you deal with this, which is you use data to identify the challenge, black male. You use data to measure the results, right? But in between, we know, because we repeated it over and over again, which because it's so true, that there is not a single black male narrative, that it's a multiplicity of narratives. So it's probably true that various changes will help some black male students, and other changes will help other black male students, right? And I wonder in terms of, I know it's not a program, but in terms of programming to implement that's a big challenge, isn't it?
It is, and but within that is how do we address our beliefs and mindsets, right? Mm-hmm. And that's what we're really trying to focus on as we think about the day-to-day, right? Think about what we do every single day. Are there things that we can adjust that aren't necessarily programmatic, that's just regular standard practice of school that we can shift and change that really can lift up and affirm the identities of black male students?
I guess what I'm saying, though, is that you would be able to identify things that we should adjust, mm-hmm. but what we should adjust might be different for some students than other students.
It is going to vary, right? And our hope is to look at that entire continuum and make sure that all of students, black male students, and all students at ETHS are getting what they need. Yep.
Just to jump onto that a little bit, you talked a lot about adaptive solutions and how important it is to, it's kind of like thinking out of the box. Mm-hmm. You know, we've already done the programs, we've already put the money behind some of the programs and the supports, but now we're trying to look a little bit deeper and come up with a more creative type of approach that is, like you said, it's a whole different way of doing things, and trying to keep people in this work despite the challenge is tricky because it looks so massive on one hand, but then on the other hand, it looks like this is the way it is.
Yeah.
So it's sometimes hard to identify those pieces that look like just the way it is.
Yeah.
So it is challenging.
Yeah, and we want to look at ourselves and believe that we can make a difference.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah.
If we can really think, not just think outside of the box, but also ask our students what they need, to tell us.
That's
because
awesome.
we don't want to mine their voices for the sake of our own agendas.
Right.
But we really want to center their voices for change.
Right.
Right? And so that's what's driving a lot of what we do for that continuum, Jonathan, right? Because we're getting a variety of students with different needs and centering all of those voices so that we get a comprehensive view of what this experience is like and what can we do to make some adjustments as a school and our learning community to meet their needs.
What I'm most concerned about going forward with the work is not that we replicate what we did in this year or last year, but that it continues to progress to meet the needs as we go forward. We can't we can't turn this into a multi-tiered program.
No.
And that's one of the challenges that gets to what you brought up, Jonathan, and I think addresses what you're talking about, Pat.
And it may be that it's really basic. I'm not an expert educator in this stuff. I'm just a parent of a black boy. So, you know, it is, I think you said something that was, you pulled it out, but it was very profound with the music course in that they felt like they were family, and it was only 12 black boys in that class, right? So it is creating an environment that they see themselves in, that they feel welcomed in, and then you start being innovative and creative. But I think what you're doing is being very intentional about looking at the information that's in front of you, right? The data that we all know, that it's not just Evanston data, but it's in our society, and then saying that ETHS is going to be intentional about how we create this space, this environment for our black boys, our black males, and then you get creative, right? But you can't do that without having an environment that they walk in each day and feel like this is just as much their environment, their community, their neighborhood that it is anyone else's. So we had a discipline committee meeting earlier today, so it was it's really promising. I feel good seeing the same information that you're speaking about, some of the same things that you're discussing here, also being discussed at the discipline committee. And we know that this is a snapshot, so I'm really looking forward to how this has translated into how we discipline our black males, and, you know, the restorative practices that you spoke of or that you highlighted, but that we go deeper into that, because then that starts changing the culture of how we see them and how we deal with them. I know there was some questions last year about what does it mean to be to have a disruptive behavior tag, or what does that look like, right? And so when we start seeing changes in how we treat them, then I think we can continue to say that, yes, we are definitely moving this needle. This is a glimpse. I'm looking forward to what it looks like overall. But this is very promising, and it is not a quick fix.
Right.
But it definitely starts with the mindset, the mirror. That's where it starts. Yeah. It's not complicated. That's where it starts. So thank you for this deep dive and helping us understand what the Year of the Black Male was all about.
Thank you. And I will say to that, when you were speaking, Monique, one of the things that came to mind was the work that you all did with the extracurricular code last year and the dress code. It feels so good not to have to police students about hats, right? When we talk about how they treat kids in their environment, like to say, you know what, wear your hat, right? For one of our Latinx kids, he wore sombrero the first day of school, right, because he could. And that environment has really shifted how kids feel about their school, that they get to be themselves and express themselves in a way that is pertinent to them without the school, you know, harassing or saying that you can't do or you can't be that. And that was a risk. No, it was a risk. It took a lot of courage, right, to do that. Those are kind of some of the things that we've been thinking about, and some of the things that we've even moved forward with that has helped us big picture with some of this work.
Thank you.
Pat.
So I just want to commend you for this fabulous work, because I think frameworks and structures and programs are not bad things, and we've done some really good, and when I say we, I mean nationally, but at ETHS, we've done some great work there. But I think what I'm hearing is this very deep and specific, looking really at the specific to understand the broader. So to understand individual student experience, and really capturing the student voice in a really authentic way, I think, Pete, you were suggesting, is so powerful because, you know, despite the best intentions, right? You can have the best ideas, but if we're not looking at the specifics of how that plays out for individual kids, we're just gonna capture a group. We're not gonna get it all. And I know it's challenging, but there's complexity to this work and to human beings. And so the dive that you're doing, the deep dive, as Monique said, is just so powerful. And wearing my day job hat, so unusual, because this is not the approach. Again, good people, but aren't really kind of going to this level to understand what the experience is of a policy or a hat, you know, like the craziest thing, what that is, and then taking that information and playing that out on how we improve that experience for that individual, for Black males, and for all of our students. And I think, Marcus, you said that earlier, I think this is learning that will only benefit every one of our students. But particularly, we have a lot of work to do with our Black males. We owe it to them. And so I think doing justice to them at the same time as helping everybody, I'm in. So congratulations, really, you should be very proud of this work. It's very good, and I hope it continues and grows over time. So thank you.
I was wondering, and I think it's tremendous work that we're embarking on, and it's courageous work. And like Monique, I was really pleased to hear the experience that the young men had in the music class. I'm thinking, and especially being an educator, I'm thinking in the ideal world, they would feel like that in every class, right? So that's about building community. And there are ways to do that. So I'm just wondering, are we exploring ways in which we can improve our practice in building community in the classroom to normalize it?
Yes. So during our opening ceremonies, Dr. Witherspoon laid out a frame philosophically on what we're doing. And so did I. And one of the things that I spoke about was this idea of well-being, right? That everything that we are doing, right, at ETHS has well-being at its core and it's focused. Essentially what I said was, and this is more of this is not a pedagogical strategy or technique, right? Although I do have a follow-up to what I'm saying. It's really about, checking in with the student to see how they're doing, to see how they're feeling, and to tell them that they're having a good day, right? Those are the kind of conversations that we're having with the faculty, because we say, you just don't know what a kid's going through, right? We want to do the best that we can to make our school a very welcoming place. And I talked about one student who wasn't a Black male, but was going through a serious crisis, and one of our safety staff very lovingly approached the student and averted something that could have been a very tragic, difficult situation just by a loving approach. I see you, what's going on, is there any way that I can help? And that is the kind of school we would want to continue to be for every student at every level. Now, with that being said, we did stumble upon a workshop where 14 of our staff members went to a workshop where they were talking about the democratic classroom, and it's really about turning over student agency to the students in the classroom. And they have some very specific instructional techniques about engaging students and creating a culture and a climate of belonging. And all 14 of them said it was life-changing professional development that we hope to expand here. So we're pleased about the promise of what that could be in the coming months.
Thank you.
It's exciting.
I'd just like to reiterate what Marcus said, because it has been so heartwarming to see how our faculty and staff have been embracing the idea that the core of our work is about the well-being of each and every child. And when we remember that, then all sorts of things radiate out from that. Many of these other indicators that we looked at are going to be greatly affected if a child, first of all, knows that we're looking out for their well-being, and that they sense it, and they hear it, and they feel it, and they experience it throughout the school. Well, what I really want to give great credit to is what a huge percentage of our staff members are really embracing that concept, embracing the idea that we're not here to teach math. We're here to look out for the well-being of a child so that that child can learn math more effectively. I'm not an English teacher, I'm a teacher of students. And within that, as we look out for them as individuals and look out for what's going to help them grow and nurture and feel part of a family, how is that going to then play out in them being more receptive to and frankly learning more English? So even our concept of why we're here, and because, and many of you would know in high schools across the country for many, many years, somebody say, I'm a math teacher, I'm a history teacher, I'm an English teacher. And the real response is, I am a teacher of students, I am a nurturer of learning, and I'm doing it through math and English and science and the like. So it is a major part of our expressed and intentional culture, and we discuss it all the time. And I must tell you, Marcus heard a lot of this, but I have to just also add some smiles. How many staff members responded so well to that discussion with the entire faculty and staff in the auditorium about well-being? And I would hear them come back and say, it was so great to hear that. That's so powerful. That's exactly how I feel. And Marcus, I know you heard a lot of it, but I heard a lot of it about that as well.
Thanks.
Mike?
I'm sitting here looking at those slides, and I would just simply say that our aspirations for the reality expressed by the second slide, the one in the middle and the liberation on the right, cannot be achieved without achieving the work that you're engaged in, without progressing way down that road that you're on. You can't get there without doing this. This is really encouraging. You know, we've been saying for years that we want to make sure that we give every child what they need to succeed. And this is at the core of it. This attitude, this shift, this transformational shift of how we do school, to use your phrase, Dr. Campbell, this is what's required. And I'm really encouraged that I mean, first of all, every time I think about it, my head explodes. I mean, the complexity of this overwhelms me, right? And I'm grateful to all of you for taking it on, because I know how hard it is. I know how difficult this must be. Well, I can only imagine, really. I probably don't know, but I can imagine. So, you know, but I come back to it. We can't get there without doing this work. And so thank you, and keep going. And let us know what we can do to support these efforts.
Thank you.
Thank you. This is amazing. This is the work. This is what it's all about. This is everything we've been thinking about, working for. This is really the manifestation. So And like you said, Dr. Davis, we're just starting. We're just starting. So I appreciate not only you, but the entire staff. A lot of people are at work at a lot of different levels, areas, everywhere, including our students. So this is community. So thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. There it is. So we're at, as Dr. Davis gets to his seat. Yes, you are right. Changing hats and all of that. Okay, all right. We're at comments from the public.
We have two comments from the public this evening. The first comment is from Joan Matthias Shelbert. Public comments are 3 minutes. What I do is I time them on my phone. I fumble with my phone when the alarm goes off. I'll let you know when there's 2 minutes, 1 minute, and then there'll be an uncomfortable moment, but that's okay. And I've already started the timer, Joan. No, I haven't. Just give me 1 second. and
Pete,
then,
you missed the pantomime that the microphone isn't on, but it's an inside joke, but tonight we hope the microphone's
we
working.
hope so.
Do turn that mic on, though. You want to turn it on.
Ah,
There you go.
So you can see how many times I've done public commenting. Am I good?
Yep.
Yeah,
All
you're
right,
good.
so, good evening. First of all, I just want to say thank you. None of you are paid, right? You had a calling, you ran, you were chosen, and you sit here. And the reason why I say that is because I stand before you also with a calling. I am the new TC president for all certified staff and teachers, and I'm taking over from someone who did it for 9+ years, and so it's some big shoes to fill, but I do look forward to it, and I look forward to working with you. Real quickly, I am an Evanston grad. I'm class of 1990. I'm Evanston born and raised, and I have a son who's class of 2029. I think Dr. Witherspoon will still be, who knows, you guys keep extending his contract, so we'll see. And then I also have a daughter who's 2032, class of Wild Kid. I'm really excited to be here. But I also want to just kind of extend a thank you to the administration. Because when I was elected, I sat down with each and every one of the top administrators here at ETHS. And I can say their doors were open, and they continue to be open. And, I just want to say, Marcus, thank you. He is a great companion in this difficult trail that we blaze forward on. Pete, you've also done the same thing. His door has always been open. And Toya, who's not here, again, people say HR is like the mystery den. It's pretty cool. She's really great. And then also Mary Rodino, her and I are going to be working together here soon because part of our last contract, there's a finance committee that we are finally going to get together and start working on. And I just want to say thank you. And then the other thing is, as union president, I have multiple roles. And this is where you guys come in, because one hat that I am not quite used to doing is being the public face for teachers with the school board as well as the community of Evanston. And so I want to just say thank you, and I look forward to working with each and every one of you, because my door is open to you, because sometimes you do need to hear directly from teachers and not through the game of telephone. And so if you ever need that, my door is always open. And I will forward to you guys our new fancy president at evanstontc.org email that can be used for all conversations. And I just hope that we can work together productively and do what's best for our students. So how much time do I have left now?
30 seconds.
30 seconds, awesome. So Doctor, I want to say I am an astronomy teacher, but I do tell my students that they're going to figure out who they are in my class, and they will learn some astronomy on the way. And the work that we do with our students, it's incredible. And when you get those letters from the students saying how their lives have changed, there's no going back. So thank you.
Thank you.
Good?
Yep, you did it within 5. Nice job. Next, we have Carrie Levin.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Carrie Levin. I'm the Executive Director of Evanston CASE. We are a nonprofit organization in Evanston that provides support services for families whose children have disabilities. I'm here this evening to address the recent due process decision against District 202 regarding its failure to provide appropriate educational services for a student in Transition House. I imagine that there are people in this room and perhaps watching on TV that don't know what Transition House is. It is a self-contained program located in a residential home in the community, 2 blocks from ETHS campus. There are approximately 30 students with disabilities in the program, ages 18 to 22. Transition House was created with the goal of providing effective instruction in vocational, social, and recreational and personal living skills. The major findings in the recent due process decision include the following. The district did not provide measurable annual goals and related services to meet the students' unique educational needs. The students' unmet needs included academic instruction, vocational skills instruction, occupational therapy, and social work services. The students' goals were generic, not thoughtfully drafted, and often cut and pasted from prior years. Progress reports for the student made general, placating comments like making adequate progress that were not meaningful, clear, or specific. The district did not conduct transition assessments that were necessary to develop appropriate transition goals, and the student entered Transition House without any transition goals. And the district failed to respond appropriately to the student's serious mental health issues. There are families in the CASE community whose children are currently attending Transition House and others whose children may attend in the near future. Needless to say, we found this decision quite disturbing. Please understand that families of young adults with disabilities in this community are now looking to you for answers.
1 minute.
Thank you. We'd like to know how you intend to respond to these serious lapses in service and support, what systems, policies, and practices are in place to ensure that these failures will not occur again with any current or future students in Transition House. We respectfully request that you, as a board, direct the administration to conduct a thorough review of the Transition House program and to report back their findings, as well as any corrective actions needed. Thank you so much for your attention to this critical issue.
Thank you. There's no further comment.
Okay, thank you. All right. Next item on the agenda is item number 10. We have a few FOIAs.
Yes, we have FOIAs from Riteki, Sandell, and Poders, and the responses are in the packet.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Okay, board committee reports. I know there was a board committee today.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I didn't.
I'm only kidding.
Okay.
I don't expect you to have a
Wait, I
report.
didn't see it. Lisa, it was literally at 4:00.
Okay. Yes, how quick are
But
you?
I will give the report at the next
All right,
meeting.
okay. I really was only.
Normally, I like to give the reports right away before I forget, so I'm very impressed.
All right, well, we'll give you a couple
I
weeks.
can give you
That's
a
all right.
quick update, and then give the notes to Lisa if you like later. No, okay.
We'll let you think it through.
All right, no.
Okay. All right. There are no other committee reports, right, pending? Is that correct?
That's correct.
All right. So student board report. Okay, Phoebe, you're on.
Okay, so the last time I was here was exactly 3 months ago in June. So a lot has happened since then. We had the whole summer, students and I. So the last thing I talked about was the Peace March and Rally at St. Sabina. It was wonderful. It was incredible. So after that, on July 7th, it was followed by the Dan Ryan March, which I also attended, as well as other ETHS students. And that was in an effort to support Chicago Strong which is a coalition in Chicago of student organizers, and their work against gun violence specifically in Chicago. So with that, I worked with Liana Wallace and Molly Hartenstein to fundraise for buses to take Evanston. It was for Evanston students, but a lot of Evanston older residents as well also came to both of these events. So other students also attended other protests. A few of those were around keeping immigrant families together and also making pledges against racism and for diversity. So that was kind of the protesty part of summer. And then, unfortunately, another thing happened is that we lost Owen Lindsay a few weeks ago, which was very difficult for the student body, especially the class of 2019. I didn't know Owen as well as I would have liked to, but I knew him well enough to know that he was an amazing person, and throughout his 3 years here, he made incredible contributions to ETHS, and he was a true joy to be around. So he will be terribly missed. But now that the summer is over and the school year has begun, it brings its own amount of stress to student life. But you also get to see friends and teachers you haven't seen for months, some of them. So that can also be a comfort at the beginning of the school year. Something that I'm looking forward to is at the student activities fairs tomorrow. So hopefully we'll have a high turnout for all clubs. So that's exciting. And then a big event that's coming up, continuing with gun violence prevention, is that I've been working again with Liana and Molly. And Molly's actually on the debate team, and she's been working with the debate coach to plan to host a debate about gun policies at ETHS. So we're actually going to hear speeches from 2 Parkland students. They're being flown in to ETHS, and also St. Sabina students who we've been working with over the summer, and that Molly has had pretty close contact with as well. So we're really looking forward to that, and yeah, we'll see how that goes. So that's all.
Thank you. Nice. Very exciting.
Yeah.
Lots to look forward to.
Any opportunity for adults to hear from the Parkland students?
Yeah, I mean, it's an open event, so show up, please.
I'm impressed by how you spent your summer. That's major.
Yes. All right, Dr. Witherspoon.
Yeah, thank you, Phoebe. I want to lift up, first of all, that this coming next Monday is going, that's September 17th. It's going to be our open house day. And you may recall that the format we've been using the last couple years is we have an open house during the day, and adult relatives to our students can register to come and spend the whole day or part of the day, and can actually follow the 9-period day with their student or part of that 9-period day. For people who cannot do that, we also have, and by the way, and for people who can do that and want to do both, they're very welcome to, but for people who cannot do that, we also have an open house in the evening. We follow the 9-period day schedule, so parents and guardians and adult family members can actually follow their students' 9-period day and learn about the classes that they're in. Each class period is 10 minutes, which gives the teacher in that classroom time to kind of lay out and explain the course expectations and course syllabus and what the students will be experiencing that year. Great way from, the first bell is 6:30, so be here before 6:30. Try not to be tardy. First bell is at 6:30, and the 9th period ends at 8:45. So it's a very vigorous evening, and we've had some really good feedback now that we've started doing that. Some other upcoming events is the Kits and Cats and Kids Block Party is this Thursday. That's where downtown Evanston is blocked off, and there are food carts, and there are entertainment for children, and there are bands, and just lots of games and excitement and programming to kick off the school year for all of our District 65, our ETHS, and our Northwestern students who are all combining to start their fall semester. So would encourage you to try to get downtown for all or part of that Thursday evening. Our first campus tour day is going to be taking place on Saturday the 29th, and these are just highly popular. You need to go online, you need to get registered, because they do fill up, but really encourage people to try to take advantage of one of those this current year if they have not been in ETHS in recent years, or if they've been in, but they haven't had a chance to see all of the things that this campus now provides for students in the 21st century. We continue to be part of the Family Action Network, FAN, and I just want to point out that we have an event coming up on October 1st. That'll be in our auditorium at 7 o'clock in the evening, and this is going to be Dr. Carol Anderson, who will be speaking on One Person, No Vote, examining the history of voter suppression. And if you've been just following some of the articles in the New York Times recently, a very timely topic, to say the least. Don't think that voter suppression is a thing of the past. YAMO is back, 61st annual production. Tickets are on sale right now. They went on sale this morning online. Performances will be October 12th and 13th, October 19th and 20th, and then a little longer weekend, the 25th, 26th, and 27th. 3 weekends in a row. To everybody, it sells out. You'll be to the point there will not be a seat for YAMO in any one of the performances before this is done. So get online and get those tickets. Finally, I'll just point out that we're already to homecoming week. Wow, where does the year go? Actually, this isn't my final, but sorry about that. I have 2 finals. But my next to final is that homecoming week starts next Monday, September 17th. There'll be lots of spirit days and activities throughout the week. We're actually have a non-attendance day in the middle of that week. On Wednesday next week is a non-attendance day, but there will be indeed the homecoming game at the end of the week, and the homecoming dance will be held on Saturday, September 22nd. By the way, that is huge. We have like 1,500 students come to our homecoming dance. Now, my penultimate announcement is that fall conference are going to be September 24th. Let's see, I'm sorry, I got that wrong. The sign-up begins on Monday, September 24th. So folks, be sure that you go online and register for conferences. They'll actually be held October 4th from 1:30 to 4:30 in the afternoon, and again from 6 to 9 in the evening. Then October 4th and 5th are non-attendance days because of parent conferences. And now the final. So I guess I was a little ahead of myself there. I do want to recognize that Gretchen Livingston and Pat Savage Williams are both going to be honored at the school board, Illinois Association of School Boards Fall Division meeting for both of achieving master board member status. So congratulations to our 2 master board members. And
Nice.
that finally concludes my report.
Right. Thank you, Dr. Witherspoon. So, am I right? Yes. The hearing for the 2018-2019 budget for Evanston Township High School is now called to order. The first order of business is the acceptance of the notice of publication.
We're almost on it here.
That's all right.
Thank you, Madam President. On August 3rd, the notice of public hearing for the final budget was published, and I believe the notice of publication is in your packet. If not, we have copies of that.
Right.
It is.
Can I have a motion to accept the notice of publication of the budget hearing?
So moved?
Second?
Roll call, please.
Yes?
Yes?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, thank you. The next order of business is a short presentation of the budget by our CFO, Ms. Mary Rodino.
Do you know this backwards? Okay, thanks. Sorry, I forgot some of my copies of the paperwork, so Lisa was so kind to.
And again, Mary is
hand out.
joined by Kendra Williams.
Yes,
And Kendra
she's
Williams.
just setting up our file
Yep.
real quick. There we go. Thank you, William. Sorry, Kendra. I shot that request to her last minute, and I was the one who put the file out there, so. So again, happy to have Kendra with us tonight, and she's gonna jump in and talk about some of the pieces similar to the way that I used to do when Bill would present the budget to you. So we may go back and forth a bit and sort of help each other out, add in some things, as I'm sure Eric might want to as well. So every year I try to shorten this presentation by a few slides because it's usually at least 9:40 by the time I get up here, so. But some of these things will just kind of, they're really there, I know it's early.
Yeah.
They're just there for your information and we'll just kind of move through them quickly. I think we have about 20 slides or so. So no surprise, we're here to talk about the final budget for fiscal 19, which is school year 18-19. And some of the things we'll talk about include the financial overview, revenues, expenditures, a little bit about the actual funds themselves, and then the financial plan. As usual, we'll talk a little bit about the state budget, some potential economic concerns, and then just kind of recap everything in the final budget. So I guess, in my opinion, we've definitely had some worse conversations about the state budget. Not that it, we're not drowning in money in Illinois for sure, but I think for me, the biggest concern in the last couple of years was what will happen when they introduce this evidence-based funding. And, the calculations are a mile long, and the bottom line for me was what happens to our funding. Because I've always felt that if the state left us alone, so to speak, I thought we'd be okay. We're fortunate to have strong property tax revenues in the area, and so we do depend on state funds, but it's not the major source of our revenues, as you'll see in some of the slides and as you already know. So state had a budget on time this year. Our funding was flat from last year to this year under this new formula. I think our increase this year was about $5,000. So we don't know what next year will hold, but our understanding is under the hold harmless agreement, as long as our enrollments don't decrease substantially, we should be okay on that portion of our funding. I think most of you, if not all of you, probably know that right at the end of the budget process in June, there was a provision, I don't want to say snuck in, but it really wasn't talked about much before it was enacted. And there were some changes made to the end of career earnings for TRS employees. There used to be what we heard about the final years of allowable 6% increases when people retire. We have a couple of those years of increases in our current teacher contract. However, the new law says that when current contracts expire, those increases for TRS retirees will be limited to 3%. So, staff who are not retiring under the current contract will be subject to those new laws in Illinois. So that'll be something that's going to change for us. Our current teacher contract does go through the spring of 2021, and then we'll have to follow whatever the state laws are, assuming those will still be maximum increases of 3% those few years before retirement. So the things that we've been talking about for several years here and still are, I'm going to say, not resolved, but not really in the press on a daily basis at this point, are property tax freezes and pension funding. We always consider them a threat. We'll talk about those a little bit at the end. So just a little bit more on state budget. We already talked about the EBF, as they call it, which is evidence-based funding. For us, what that means is it replaces a revenue stream that we had called general state aid. And off the top of my head, I think that was about $1.6 million a year. And they've combined general state aid with some of what we call our state categorical aid payments. And those are now built into this new formula of evidence-based funding. Some of the ones off the top of my head that are now included, one of the English language learner grants and special ed personnel and extraordinary grants. We used to get separately, track them separately. Those are part of the ones that ran kind of late when we talked about, will we get the fourth quarter payment or won't we? They typically ran late, and in some years we didn't get them until much later in the next year. The good news is those now, which are wrapped up in that evidence-based funding, those come really regularly like our old general state aid did, so that's the positive side of it. The other things that are still considered categoricals and come separately do still have some lags on them. As you all know, it's an election year, so I don't know what that means. It probably means something different to all of us. In my mind, I think that people are focused on winning elections, and some, I don't know if some of the candidates will run on some of the things that are or not favorable to us, but an election year always does seem to kind of affect what happens at the state level. I'm gonna try to not talk over Kendra's part, so if she hits me, you'll know why. Okay, so we've been talking about this for a few years. I mean, Bill had talked about it for years. There's something called corporate property replacement tax. Some people call it the personal property replacement tax. It's just a historical tax in Illinois. We get a good amount of money from it. We get, I think, between the two funds that we divide it between, I think it's 1.6 million. We always know that that's at risk of going away, but we've not heard anything to the positive or negative on that yet, but it's something that's been talked about for a few years. Again, we always know that the pension cost shift could be a really, it could be a very significant expense for us down the road when or if the state decides to put those costs partially on the school districts. We also, within the last year, have heard about property tax freeze legislation from the governor. So that's my opinion, is it dropped for now, but I put a question mark in there. So those are the two things that are always in the back of our minds as we think about the future. A little bit of good news on the consumer price index for the 2017 levy and the 2018 levy, which means that's the consumer price index from late 2016 and late 2017. Both of those numbers are 2.1%. So those of you who've been on the board for a while remember that some of those numbers were as low as 0.7%, 0.8%. That determines the general rate that our property tax revenues increase. So we can kind of only work with what we have. We do have some new property that does come on in Evanston. Some years it's good, some years it's not much to talk about. But the CPI numbers are going up. That also some people think can correlate with the cost of goods going up as well. So it's kind of a double-edged sword, but at least we're expecting, if with no property tax freeze, to see a pretty decent increase in our revenues. And as we've said for the last few years, everybody we're surrounded by has a pretty bad bond rating. Cook County, Chicago, state of Illinois, but we have maintained our AAA rating, which was reaffirmed this spring in May, April or May. Okay, so quick financial overview. The budget overall is $85.8 million, and that's a 1.8% increase overall from the fiscal 18 budget. This includes all of our funds, which includes capital. That's probably the one that varies the most from year to year, depending on funding and depending on the project. So take that number for what it represents, which includes all things which are not necessarily completely consistent from year to year. So we often talk about the operating funds, which are really the funds that do fund all of our operating expenses, if you will, but that includes education fund, operations fund, transportation fund. That budget of just over $76.2 million is a 2.3% increase from the fiscal 18 budget, and it's mainly due to scheduled and obligatory increase in personnel costs from contract. Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit about revenues, and I'm going to let Kendra take over on that.
All right, so as far as revenues go for the budget, we took a conservative revenue estimate approach, making sure that we're not overestimating what we would be receiving in our revenues. And as far as the evidence-based funding that Mary mentioned, that's going to be flat for revenues. And also for categorical state aid, which some of that, as she mentioned, is now rolled into with general state aid, and that's what EBF is. But still, we're not looking at very much as far as increases go. We're really just thinking that there's going to be slight increases for our categorical state aid. For federal aid, there will be some increases, but then there's also going to be some associated expenditures with that, such as room and board. And
Sorry.
And so for property taxes, which is a big chunk, that'll be represented in another slide as well. A big chunk of the revenue that we receive, as mentioned, it's following the CPI of 2.1% for the 2017 and 2018 tax levy year. And as far as corporate personal property replacement tax, being a concern, and we'll see where that goes. We do receive a chunk of money from there, but so far we're still getting it at this point. Controlling this now.
Yeah.
And so, as far as the property values, the EAV for Evanston, we have seen an increase in this, really denoting a trend. So although we don't have that 2017 number there, you can take a look at these 6 years that we have represented on the slide and see that in the 3 years we were seeing decreases, but we have seen consistent increases for the last of the 3 years, and we're expecting that to continue as well.
And I just want to remind everyone that we get that triennial reassessment, so sometimes you see numbers that don't change much, say from like 2015 to 2016, but when it's a reassessment year, those numbers tend to change dramatically as they do in some of those figures.
For student fees, we did not increase student fees for this school year. For summer school, we did raise fees for 2017, but there was no increase for summer of 2018. And, sorry, this was a slide that I had mentioned before where you can see property taxes represented there as a large chunk of our funding. So for property taxes, that's 84%, other local revenues, 5%, and then we have some smaller portions, categorical state aid, federal aid, and that corporate personal property tax that we were talking about before as well. And then this just shows that information historically over the years by what we received from local sources, state sources, and federal sources, with the largest chunk being local sources like property taxes in the orange. And then it just is representing the previous years as well.
And if you look at the blue bar, you can see just the smallest change from 17 to 18, and those are the state revenues. So they're definitely not growing. I mean, they're definitely still there, but the proportions have changed a little bit, so.
That slide really sums up what's wrong with education funding in the state of Illinois. Just say, it's a really beautiful slide, the way you have it colored.
I thought it looked nice.
It's right
but-
there in a nutshell.
And it's funny because there was some calculation that came out today in a newsletter that Eric forwarded about, one of the candidates in their platform about half of, a school's, I'm gonna paraphrase, half of a school's revenue should come from state funds and half should come from local, but how do you do that math, when you look at a bar like that?
Yeah.
How do you make that work? So, I'm happy that we're on the fortunate end of that, but the problem is there are a lot of districts that aren't, so.
Totally.
Okay, all right, so I'll talk am I doing this one? Was that the plan? Sorry, we only had a few minutes to talk this evening before the meeting. So I'll just talk a little bit about expenditures, and no big surprises here. This chart doesn't really change much from year to year, but when you add in salaries and fringe benefits, you get to 75% of our expenditures, and we all know that's where school districts tend to spend most of their money, as a lot of organizations do. Purchase services, supplies, capital outlay, we try to keep those percentages in line with previous years and reduce them if at all possible. I think I have a slide on that later. Another bar graph, because I think they're just kind of powerful. You guys have been seeing the pie charts for so many years, but if you look at the red bar, that is our education fund, and by far, of course, the majority of our expenses, and then the blue bar above that is our operations and maintenance. So I like these because it gives you the history from year to year to kind of keep us in line, and so that you can see that we do try not to have any big swings in how we spend the money. Salaries overall are increasing about 2.7%. We think that that's a pretty good number considering the contractual obligations of the multiple union groups in the building. And there have been large freshman classes the last couple of years, and so some of the sectioning process did require some additional certified staff to welcome those students in and give them the proper attention and not increase class sizes. So I think given all of those things over the last couple of years, a 2.7% increase is, overall, is right about where I'd want to be. Just the other categories that I mentioned, fringe benefits, 4% increase, you know, considering the number of employees that we have taken on for some of those larger student populations. I think that's pretty reasonable. Our HR department, specifically Yolanda Hardy, works with the insurance committee, and we have been really fortunate on our insurance costs for the last number of years. Supplies, materials, purchase services, you can see for yourself, those are pretty reasonable increases, decreases. And the capital outlay I want to mention does not include the capital improvements fund. That's just the type of capital outlay that we typically see like in the operations fund where they do some smaller projects. And that always varies from year to year depending on what's going in the capital fund and what is in the operations fund. There's also a little bit of capital in the education fund, but not much these days because computers are not really capital, so.
So, just for an analysis of the funds, as mentioned before, the education fund is our largest fund. And so for that fund, there's going to be a 2.5% increase over FY 2018, fiscal year 2018. And so that's going to be $67.1 million. And as I mentioned, it's a large operating fund. And this increase is due to the salary increases that are expected, staffing additions due to enrollment increases. And so all the other funds are on this slide instead of having a separate one for each.
We used to do one slide for each one, so you're welcome, Marcus.
So that got truncated a bit. Since we dedicated a whole slide to the education fund, which is largely where the money is at, and then the other ones are represented on this slide. And so we have the operations and maintenance fund at $7.63 million, which would be our second largest fund, and then we're expecting a 2.3% increase there. Tort fund at $365,000 would just be at 0%, no change there. For bond and interest, $2.9 million, which would be a 3% increase. Transportation fund, $1.23 million, and that's actually a decrease of 5.5%. And for the IMRF fund, $3.4 million and a 3.2% increase. Working cash would remain flat at 0. And the capital fund, $3.5 million, which is a decrease.
A couple of quick things on the slide I just wanted to point out. Working cash fund is not at 0. It's just not really, no,
yeah,
and I did the slide, so I wasn't really clear on that.
But, yeah.
It's just not, it doesn't really have any income. We credit all the interest to the other funds, and it's just a kind of a rainy day fund. It is stable from year to year. And I wanted to really just mention the transportation fund quickly. Last year, when I was doing these slides, I looked at the decrease last year, and it was like 12-point-something% last year from the previous year, fiscal 17. I really would like to credit the leadership and staff in the special education department. That is a direct result of their efficiencies in transportation, making sure that outside schools are tight and not, you know, if a student trip is authorized outside of the regular routes, there should be a reason. Is that student going to a job? And so they've been really attentive to those costs and worked well with our purchasing department. And so I think we should all be really proud of having reduced those costs in the last couple of years. So just wanted to point that out. Let me take away.
Okay.
Sure. Yeah, it's up to you. Okay, so each year we do talk about values-based budgeting, and I know it's kind of like a broken record, but I like to remind everyone that whenever we put together budget numbers, we do try to maintain those reduced levels. Some years back, we cut contractual services and supplies by, I think, about 10% when Bill was still here. We had to reinstate a few of those, but we certainly made people account for that. And so we've tried to maintain those reduced levels. We've definitely had most of those budgets remain flat, and we've reduced where we can for those areas. We also, try to accomplish some things by personnel attrition. If there are retirements in positions that don't need to be replaced, we can maybe shift those positions around to something, for example, that would reflect higher student enrollment. So we had a couple of positions this past year, not in a classroom setting, but positions that were utilized in a different way as needed, or not filled. So again, just kind of broken record, but instruction's always the top priority when we do the budgeting. We certainly have conversations with instructional administrators. We try not to operate in a silo. We know that maintaining a reasonable student-teacher ratio is important, and that the district has taken a stance of avoiding personnel layoffs wherever possible. Just quickly, financial strategies. We do try to look at capital expenditures and projects that make sense and could help reduce operating costs in the future. By the way, our lovely entrance 3 should hopefully be open by the end of September, and you'll all be thrilled, and I think it will change lives here, so I'm really proud of that one. And we have looked, as you know, at off-campus special education alternatives, and we'll be talking to you more about that in the coming months as we work on our location over at Hartree and try to have some smooth transitions next summer and next fall. Continued employee wellness strategies, as you can see, to have very minimal healthcare cost increases, I think, is to be commended in this environment. And I would say that the district is really great at looking at reorganizations if needed, and thinking about how to best utilize all of our resources. I always put in a slide on Plan B. I think our two biggest potential threats, if the state reduces our revenues or does a cost shift. We've been talking about that for a while, several times in this presentation. So there could be, to me, worst case scenario, that would be possible reductions in personnel and expenses. But again, that'd be a worst case scenario situation. I think we're almost done. Oh, we're done. So thank you, and thanks to Kendra for coming up on sort of short notice and helping out.
Thank you. Thank you both.
If there's questions, yeah.
Yes, questions from the board?
Or comments.
Pat?
So, as usual, this is amazing. I am always impressed that it's long, but I don't need an MBA in finance to read it and understand. So thank you. You guys do just such a great job. And not to mention, it's balanced and in line and all those good things. So thank you I know this is just a ton of work, so thank you. But I do want, there was something I read, and I can't remember exactly what it is, I apologize, but just made me think, and then Marcus talking about the professional development opportunity that some of the staff said changed lives. There was something in there that made me think we were, being careful with our professional development, and we should be careful on every line, I'm sure. But I just want to say out loud as a board member that I feel it's really important to invest in our teachers, because that's an investment in our kids. And so as we look at all the worst case scenarios and things, I just hope we can continue that in our values, that is really high on the list, because that's very important to me. I think that's a big piece of how we support the kids. But great work, and really appreciate all you guys do, so thank you.
One thing I will say about the PD work is, agree or disagree with it, there are some PD components into our larger grants, like Title I, for example, and Title II is traditionally used mainly for PD as well. So I like that we kind of always have those kind of in our back pocket. And certainly Pete and Marcus do come forward and express some need for training, as well as Scott Bramley. So I think for the most part, we've been able to accommodate most of those requests, and we've done some things also to bring the PD to us so that people don't have to travel as much, so.
Other comments, questions?
Great job.
Excellent. You've done a great job. Great job.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, I think I have some more lines here. Thank you, Ms. Botello. I've already done that, questions and comments from the board. I now declare this hearing adjourned. Oh, yes, thank you. Next is the public comment portion. Are there any comments from the public? Hearing none, I now declare this hearing adjourned. Thank you. Follow the script, right? The board will take action on the budget. And
Ms. Monsell, you said something, I think it's worth lifting up. So this is not, and by the way, I failed to say with that budget or finance award that out of the over 800 school districts in the state of Illinois, there are 60 that have earned this award. So it's not commonly given out. But what I want to point out in terms of this hearing is, and this is now our 13th consecutive year of presenting a fully balanced budget. And so we're, you know, that's part of our value-based budgeting, that we are committed that we will bring you balanced budgets, whatever the economy or the fiscal situation of the state puts upon us. We're going to keep this budget balanced.
excellent, and I appreciate
Music
that.
to my ears.
Yes,
Balanced budget.
wonderful. Yes, thank you. Thank you for that, Dr. Witherspoon. All right, we are at action items. The first action item is approval of the final budget for 2018-19.
So moved.
Second?
Roll call, please.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, thank you. The next action item is approval of final park school budget for 2018-19.
Move approval?
Second?
Before we vote, I wanted to make an observation since it's good news. It's always good to have good news.
That's good.
So we've been talking for a long time about the financial problems of Park School, and I think it's worth pointing out here that largely because of greater success in attracting out-of-district tuition-paying students, we are actually going to be contributing $20,000 less this coming year in the budget than we did last year.
Yep, absolutely.
Thank you for pointing that out. All right, we have a motion on the table. Roll call, please.
Yes. Yes?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
Yes, thank you. Next item is approval of resolution abating the working cash fund from Series 2018 bond proceeds.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Yes?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, thank you. Next item is approval of the Latino Heritage Month proclamation, and we will have that read by Lisa De La Fuente and Mark Metz. Start with the Spanish.
Mes Nacional de la Herencia Hispana Latina, 15 de septiembre del 2018, 15 de octubre del 2018. A lo largo de nuestra historia, nuestra nación ha sido enriquecida por el pasado histórico de todos los que llaman hogar a los Estados Unidos de América. Los ancestros de la comunidad hispana latina han estado en este continente por siglos, precediendo las fronteras actuales de los Estados Unidos, y generaciones han tejido las fibras únicas en el diverso tejido de nuestro país y jugaron un importante rol en la formación de nuestro carácter nacional como un pueblo de ilimitadas posibilidades.
First paragraph.
Yes.
This is the National Hispanic Latino Heritage Month, September 15th, 2018 through October 15th, 2018. Throughout our history, our nation has been enriched by the stories past of all who call the United States of America home. Ancestors of Americans' Latinx community have been on this continent for centuries, preceding the current boundaries of the United States, and generations have woven unique threads into the diverse fabric of our country and played an important role in shaping our national character as people of limitless possibility.
Como señaló el presidente Barack Obama, los hispanos y latinos contribuyen al éxito de nuestra nación de maneras extraordinarias. Ellos sirven en las Fuerzas Armadas y el gobierno, asisten en las escuelas en toda América y fortalecen la economía. Ellos son el padre que trabaja en 2 empleos para darle a sus hijos una mejor vida, a la madre que se aventura a tomar un riesgo y comenzar un negocio. Ellos son el estudiante que persigue sus más grandes aspiraciones mediante la educación superior. Ellos son el residente legal permanente que busca naturalizarse y convertirse en cuidador y el líder de negocios cuyos seres queridos han vivido en los Estados Unidos por generaciones. Ellos muchas veces son bilingües, una invalorable intelectual habilidad del idioma que nos esforzamos en brindar a todos nuestros estudiantes. Cada día vemos el tremendo impacto que ellos tienen en nuestras comunidades y ellos reflejan una verdad perdurable en el corazón de nuestra nación. No importa de dónde vienes o de dónde son tus raíces, con trabajo duro y perseverancia puedes lograrlo en América.
As President Barack Obama noted, Hispanics and Latinos contribute to our nation's success in extraordinary ways. They serve in the military and government, attend schools across America, and strengthen the economy. They are the father who works 2 jobs to give his children a better life, and the mother who ventures out to take a risk and start a business. They are the student who pursues their greatest aspirations through higher education. They are the lawful permanent resident who seeks to naturalize and become a citizen, and the business leader whose loved ones have lived in the United States for generations. They are oftentimes bilingual, an invaluable intellectual language skill we strive to provide all our students. Each day, we see the tremendous impact they have on our communities, and they reflect an enduring truth at the heart of our nation. No matter where you come from or where your roots are, with hard work and perseverance, you can make it in America.
Para honrar los logros de los hispanos y latinos en América, el Congreso, mediante Ley Pública 100-402, según enmienda, he autorizado y solicitado emitir una proclama designado del 15 de septiembre al 15 de octubre como el Mes Nacional de la Herencia Hispana Latina.
To honor the achievements of Hispanics and Latinos in America, the Congress, by Public Law 100-402, as amended, has authorized and requested issuing annually a proclamation designating September 15th through October 15th as National Hispanic/Latino Heritage Month.
Por tanto, nosotros, la Junta de Educación del Distrito 202, proclamamos que en celebración de los excepcionales líderes hispano-latinoamericanos del pasado, presente y futuro, y las valiosas contribuciones de la comunidad hispana-latina, proclamamos del 15 de septiembre del 2018 al 15 de octubre del 2018 como el mes de la herencia hispana latina en la escuela preparatoria del municipio de Evanston.
Therefore, we, the Board of Education of District 202, proclaim that in celebration of past, present, and future exceptional Latinx American leaders and the valuable contributions of the Latinx community, do hereby proclaim September 15th, 2018 through October 15th, 2018 as Hispanic/Latino Heritage Month at Evanston Township High School.
Thank you. Thank you, both of you. Can I have a motion, please, to approve the
So
Latino
moved.
Heritage Month proclamation?
Second.
Roll call, please.
Metz,
Yes.
Parsons,
Yes.
Vaughn,
Yes?
Lode,
Yes.
Livingston,
Yes.
Mansell,
Yes?
Savage Williams.
Yes, thank you. Next is the consent agenda, which consists of the treasurer's report from July 2018, approval of minutes, August 13th, 2018 closed session meeting, and August 13th, 2018 regular meeting, approval of bills, personnel agenda, appointments to staff, exempt and support staff, change in status, educational overload stipends, FASH honorariums, mentors and instructional coaches, leaves of absence, maternity, exempt and certified, resignation, support staff, coach, and retirement of support staff.
Move approval?
Second?
Roll call, please.
Parsons,
Yes.
Vaughn,
Yes?
Lode,
Yes.
Livingston,
Yes.
Mansell,
Yes.
Metz,
Yes.
Savage Williams.
Yes, thank you. So now we're at item number 20, old and new business. Is there any old business?
Yes. Old business.
Yes.
Back in June, we talked about potentially revising our sexual harassment policy to make it, I guess it would be broader.
Broader.
And taking away some of the conditions on sexually, unwelcome sexual advances that, to make them impermissible here. And we talked about coming back here in September, and in the meantime, we were going to check with our lawyers to see if there was a problem.
So as a follow-up, I asked our attorneys to review the proposed revision to our sexual harassment policy. And our attorney is fine with the revision and points out that the proposed revision sets a higher standard than what is required by the law.
Right.
That was the quote. And since it is a higher standard, I will take it to the very next policy committee meeting for review, and then pending that review to the board.
Good. I just wanted to add that there's a little of additional urgency here because there was an item in the New York Times a couple of weeks ago about how the Department of Education is changing its regulations on sexual harassment. And they are going from an Obama administration standard that said any unwelcome conduct of a sexual nature to one that says unwelcome conduct on the basis of sex that is so severe, pervasive, and objectively offensive that it denies a person access to the school's education program or activity. So while the federal government is making more tolerable, I think we should make less tolerable. So, policy committee?
Yeah.
Okay.
Right. Any other old business or new business? Anybody? Is there polling of the board? Any comments from anybody? Got some exciting. I have a form that I need all board members to sign regarding the budget, adoption of the budget. So before you leave tonight, please see me so that Lisa doesn't have to chase after you. All right, could I please have a motion to adjourn?
So moved?
We don't need a second, right?
Second.
It's all done.
all done.
Meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.
All right, come sign.